I'll start with you, Tyrone, bringing you here on the show, man. I know you're very much in tune with these things. All right. What were your impressions as the numbers came out? It was probably, I think the numbers were released like an hour before the earnings call itself.
Correct.
And then just what were your impressions as they were going through everything?
So the postpaid ads felt felt low in my opinion when they reported the 589,000. I was kind of like, okay. I thought it would be higher, right? And once again, they allowed AT&T to beat them on that most what people consider the most premium segment. They allowed AT&T to outgrow them once again.
So
But
what Tyrone is referring to, everybody out there, T-Mobile came in with 589,000 postpaid net adds. AT&T came in at 696,000, and Verizon minus 36,000 in terms of the consumer, and that's what he's referring to.
correct. So that kind of caught me off guard. But then I know T-Mobile has their faults, but we have to start listening to them because what they're saying is, it's true. They improved the Sprint churn or the overall churn by 17 basis points. They said if it was lower, which it probably will be in the second quarter, they would have added almost a million net ads.
Yeah, they're still responsible for that churn. I know how they
Yeah.
frame it. I know that's what they do. They're their customers. So if
Mhm.
they lose them, that means those customers are going elsewhere. That is
Correct.
that is their churn. And you know what? It's crazy you bring that up, Tyrone, because he mentioned this is the CEO of T-Mobile, Mike Sievert. He mentioned that migrations are ongoing. They talked about the network piece. There was going to be like migrations, not just in terms of the network, but like the accounting, like when it comes to the billing and plans, right? So that's
Yep.
ongoing. That's supposed to be wrapping up mid-year or so.
Correct.
And then and lastly, in as it pertains to the Sprint customer, he mentioned the leasing of the phones as being a problem. He said that that was the essentially the pain point of that customer, and that's why they're churning.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know whatever they're doing at T-Mobile to try to retain them. I don't think they're doing much. There
So
must because they have the Sprint Forward. You remember that, Tyrone?
yeah, I remember that, and there was a timeline attached to that sprint forward. So I'll say one more thing, and then I'll hand it over to Dennis. They stated two things, right? The leasing is a problem because that customer doesn't have 600 megahertz on their device. That's one. So they want to get them into a T-Mobile EIP because that phone is going to have 600 megahertz on it. And then the second piece, they stated they are not too concerned with that customer churning because it's a low ARPU customer. That's how they're able to claim a higher ARPU because they're letting go of these Sprint SWAC accounts and the $10 employee accounts. They're letting those go. They're letting them walk. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, you can go to Mint Mobile or you can go to an MVNO. We're okay with that. We're not going to fight for somebody that's paying $10 a month. That's pretty much what they said. So
And
I'll hand it off to them.
if their goal or intention is to improve ARPU, then I totally understand them.
Yep.
I mean, I say the same thing about Verizon, right? Like they shoot premium customer, and if that's their goal, that's their end game. Then what they do, I understand it. Go ahead, Dennis.
So there's three real main reasons why people leave. But the number one and most important one for why Sprint customers leave T-Mobile is because of the network. There are lots of places where T-Mobile does not have their own native coverage, and there was customers that were relying on those Sprint sites. And T-Mobile has decided to decom, interestingly enough, a lot of Sprint sites that were actually plugging coverage gaps. They just decided to off them. Now that customer has no coverage. So of course they're going to want to leave when there's no coverage. That's the number one thing. And then the number two, like, yeah, the devices are important, but T-Mobile just as easily could have just said, hey, Mr. Lease a phone, we're going to go ahead and apply leasing to these other new phones that support our network more better in a higher capacity, and just called it a day and kept making money. And the third thing, which people are touching on in the audience, is the fact that Sprint customers aren't being treated well, even if they're on like more premium plans. The fact that they're still paying the fees, the fact that they're losing perks, the fact that they're not eligible for upgrades when they're on the Sprint accounts, they get treated basically like second class citizens, essentially within T-Mobile, even if they have the most premium Sprint Unlimited, whatever they called it, plans of the day. So those are your three main reasons, I would say, for why Sprint customers are leaving.
I have to push back a little bit on the network thing. So the networking issue, kind of having like trouble with connectivity. Why in the world would a Sprint customer, former Sprint, current T-Mobile customer, why would they stay on a bad network for them for 2 years? If it was going to be a bad experience, that means it's been a bad experience for 2 years.
Because what I'm saying is, there's places where there's Sprint sites that T-Mobile had yet to get to, so that wasn't a bad experience for them.
They've only decommissioned 35% of the sites. So
yeah, but
that wouldn't explain the consistent churn. It does explain for some of it. I think you're right. It accounts for some. But I think that probably was happening the first and second quarter of the merger. Like that's when it peaked. So that would explain, you're right. The spike in churn definitely happened because of networking. But the consistent churn would have to be something else or have an additional factor at play.
Well, that's why I said there's three, but I'm saying number one is connectivity. Number two is the phone piece that Tyrone touched on. And number three is the fact that they're not eligible for anything, like as far as like perks, promos, etc.
Oh yeah, they got different promos. That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
So
nothing compelling enough, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, more so they're being treated like second class citizens. Like literally,
they've said that in my videos, man. I've read the comments. Yeah, that's true.
Like think about the iPhone 13. You couldn't even finance an iPhone 13 when it came out if you were a Sprint customer. You had to move over to the T-Mobile side, get on the T-Mobile biller, get on like the Magenta or Magenta MAX plans. Like you literally could not finance an iPhone 13. You had to buy it outright, basically from Apple.
Man, so the churn rate overall was industry worst in terms of postpaid, and they put a lot of the onus and the blame on the Sprint side. Prepaid churn was really good, Tyrone. I don't know if you caught this, 2.67%. I was impressed.
What is prepaid churn normally, Sneed?
It's like over 3%.
Like for the industry or for T-Mobile, I mean?
Industry wide, it's probably closer to 4%.
Okay.
A bad prepaid company might be looking at 5%.